Hi everyone, it's Simon from High Plane Games with a review of Skyride. This is the PS4 version you see on your screen, but it's also available for Nintendo Switch and PC, I believe, as well. The game was in Japan for quite some time and before it got released in other territories, and sometimes I always think, ooh, I could have found a hidden gem, because I was like that with Malicious and quite a few other games over the PS3 and 4 era. But alas no, I feel like I have not found a gem here, and I'll explain why. The game itself is set in one single level and one single very small environment in a post-apocalyptic world with water across the bottom and then like destroyed buildings around you. You control essentially a jet ski hovercraft slash motorbike environment that can fly. And it does so quite nimbly actually in the way how you go around. It's quite arcade in the way how the controls feel. But essentially this is a weaponized vehicle, so you can shoot with like rifle guns from your trigger buttons, but then you can collect power-ups as well for grenades, bombs, mines, and lasers, I think is the fourth one, that you map to the face buttons and you can pick them up and try and use them to your advantage. Every 5 waves of enemies, and the waves will get bigger essentially in terms of numbers rather than complexity of different types of enemies. You'll get a boss level every 5th level essentially, and that boss person will basically mean that you'll have to change your tactics, because that's really where the game becomes tricky and you'll have to really think about what you want to do and how you want to do it. The game, for me, I spent most of my time driving in reverse, shooting from where I could see, because the game is of the ilk where you shoot in the direction of where you're facing. So because you don't really get damage from hitting the surroundings, it was easier to just fly in reverse and shoot at what I could clearly see rather than having to really tactically line things up properly. That really helped by becoming almost like the jet ski version of myself. So I would basically spend most of the time on this game floating around on the water, shooting the enemies as they came towards me, and I found that easier than having to fly around shooting at everyone else, because whereas I'm not very good at flying games, I would be shot to bits by the time I could line up any bugger to shoot them. And I found that very difficult. And the map makes it worse, because the map is in a 2D plane up in the top right hand corner, and it gives no perception of what level of height the enemies are. So they could all be at ground level, they could all be at high altitude, but I wouldn't have a clue because the map doesn't tell me that. So I found it easier to just stay on the low ground and let the enemies come to me. The other issue of this, apart from the one environment, the really low polygon graphics, which I guess kind of is compensated for by the amount of enemies that you can have on screen. So there's like 70 to 80 sometimes at one time, which is impressive in its own feat because you don't necessarily get slowdown, but it still looks a mess and it feels PS2-y, which is not necessarily a bad thing, it's just not a great thing either. It's very much down to personal interpretation. But there's just no reason to come back to the game. You've got your own high score leaderboard, which is fine, and there is an online leaderboard, which clearly shows that this hasn't sold very well because the online leaderboard doesn't have tons and tons and tons of players on it. But yeah, it feels very hollow very quickly, because the progression is essentially, we'll throw you some more enemies, we'll change their colour and therefore they're now harder. It doesn't really innovate or give you anything that kind of makes you go, ooh, they really thought about that. So it just feels like a really low budget, low effort send out. And yeah, it just feels really hollow. There's something about it that just gives it zero character, and that was a real shame for me. So maybe arena shooters who like wave-based encounters might enjoy something in Skyride here, but I think for the rest of us we can move on. We'll be okay with not having played it. So, thank you very much for watching. You guys take care, and I'll see you again. High Plane Games. Bye! This channel is just one of my many projects that cover games, music and film. If you enjoy any of these and would consider supporting me to develop further in the future, you can do so by visiting patreon.com/Satorimon. Thank you for your time and for watching the video.